everyone, it's Robin Riley for Bello's Designs. Welcome to my video tutorial. Today we are going to be creating backgrounds with the Sweet Poppy Celtic Star stencil. Before we get into the project today, I'd like to take this moment to invite you to our Facebook groups. We have two pages. One page is the Bello's Design Lounge. The other page is the Bello's Design a la carte. Two different pages for two different purposes. The Design Lounge is where we showcase all of the Lavinia products that we have. The a la carte page is where we showcase all of the other products that we are using, such as Sweet Poppy, Nellie's, Cardio. Anything that Patty has in the shop can be placed and displayed on that page. We are also on other social media platforms such as Instagram, Pinterest, and TikTok. And to access those pages, all you have to do is search the hashtag Bello's Designs. Okay, so let's take a look at these backgrounds that we're going to be creating. Okay, as you can see, each one is a tad bit different. Each is very simple to do. And I just want to demonstrate the process of getting each one of the three backgrounds that I'm going to create. So the supplies that I'm going to be using. First of all, the paper that I'm using will be 4 1/4 by 5 3/4 inches. It is a heavyweight cardstock. You could use watercolor paper if you liked, but I find that this particular one that I use holds a lot of water and it doesn't create a lot of warping. And we will be adding some water to the project. Okay, next I will be definitely using a magnetic sheet. Now with the Sweet Poppy stencils, let me bring the stencil in. These are magnetic. Okay, and you really need to have a magnetic sheet to work on. It just really is nice to hold that stencil in place as you are working. So the Sweet Poppy stencil that I'm using is called the Celtic Star, and its number is SP6152. The Celtic Star stands for being, spirit, life, and eternal. And then the knots that you see here that are interwoven strands, there's no beginning and there's no end. And that is also symbolic. It stands for unity, eternity, and the continuum of life. So just based on that alone, I really like the meaning behind the Celtic Star. So some of the other projects or supplies that we'll be using. I will be using a scrap piece of card. This is actually just an old ATC card that I have on the side of my desk. I'll be using the stamp, Life is a Great Big Canvas, and that comes from the Sweet Poppy set called Floral Dreams A5 Stamp Set. The inks that I am going to be using, all of these are Distress Oxide inks. I'll be using Peacock Feathers, Picked Raspberry, and Squeezed Lemonade. That will be for the first background that I do. The second background that the third background that I'll be demonstrating will be Rusty Hinge will be used. I am going to be using my blending brushes. You can use whatever tool you like for blending. I will need a spray water bottle. I will be needing a VersaFine Clair in Nocturne, and you can use either your stamping platform or an acrylic block to stamp that sentiment, whatever you're comfortable with. Most definitely, you are going to need a low-tack tape. My favorite is the Sweet Poppy low-tack tape. Works perfectly without destroying or damaging the paper that you are working on. Optionally, you can use a permanent marker to create a frame. Okay, let's get started. Let me set everything to the side. And we are going to begin and create this first background. Now this one is relatively very simple. You want to take your piece of white card And I'm not, as you can see, and you probably already know, most of the things that Sweet Poppy make are rather large. And the size of my card definitely cannot fit the entire stencil. So what I like to do is I just kind of offset it to one side, and I try to center it the best I can, and then carefully place it onto that magnetic sheet. Now, as you can see, there's a small strip of white paper sticking out on the top and on the bottom. So what I'll do to save any type of an accident here is I'm going to tape that off. I really don't want to get ink in that area. Now, granted, you could cut it off after you're done. Again, you do you, I'm doing me. This is how I like to do it. So starting with my first ink, I'm going to be using the peacock feathers and a blending brush. Going to ink it up. And then I'm just going to apply the ink to about 1/3 of this image. I'm just applying a nice light coat. I'm not too worried if it's blotchy. That's, you know what, that's okay. Okay, once I have that down, I'm going to come in with the next color, which is the squeezed lemonade. I'm going to apply a light coat here, overlapping with the peacock feather so that I get a little bit of a blend of the colors. So I should see a little bit of green right there where they connect. I'll come back in with that blue brush without applying any more ink, and I'm just going to smooth over that intersection of the two colors. Lastly, I'll bring in the picked raspberry. Once again, the same thing, a blending tool of sorts, applying a light coat of ink over the entire stencil, going to focus the intersection of the two colors, which will create a peachy color. Again, I'll come in with my yellow brush to smooth out that blend. And that's basically it for a very simple background. I'm sure we're all capable of doing that. Fun and easy. So let me remove this tape and the stencil itself. And there you see we have a sweet background that we could further enhance with maybe some words, maybe some other stamps that you would like to use on it. But the fun part of this, let me clean off my magnetic sheet. I'm going to just set this down onto the magnetic sheet without the paper on the top. And this is the background that I'm going to be creating next. And actually, this is my absolute favorite one. So what you simply do, because the ink is already on the stencil, you come in with a water brush and you spritz it, grab your piece of paper, and then I am just going to align up the left edge of my paper with the outermost point and do my best to get it straight. Press it into that ink, and there's the watercolor effect of that background. And I absolutely love that for a background. So let's look at both of them, the comparison. This was the ink directly through the stencil. And then once that was done, I misted and sprayed with water, a light coat, over the stencil itself and placed the paper into the ink. And you get that absolutely wonderful, wonderful watercolor effect. And then you can go on to finish this as you would like. Now, let me clean this off. It is best to actually go and take this or have a little container of water that you can slide this in to wipe this off. And I just always use plain water on this. I don't add anything else to the water. I just simply scrub it off, and let it air dry. Now, there are some very intricate pieces to this, so you want to be careful not to pick up any of those pieces because it's really easy to bend this. And you don't want to do that because that totally ruins the stencil. All right, so let me just very quickly give this a dry. Even the back side, I want that dried because some of the ink could have very easily slipped under there. Clean off my surface. So this time around, what we're going to do, let me show you. This is what we're going to create. Okay, this is a good way to make a fun background with a stencil. So I'm going to grab that piece of paper now, that same heavyweight cardstock, and I'm going to line up just half of the star onto the long edge of the paper, doing the best that I can to get it even. I'm not too concerned if it's not perfect, but I want to get it as close as possible. So once that's in place, I'm going to lay that onto the magnetic sheet, and I'm going to take the tape again and cover up those areas that I do not want to accidentally get ink on. I need one more piece to cover up the right side. Now for this particular card, I'm going to start out using the Rusty Hinge Distressed Oxide along with my blending brush. Now this part of the star is going to be the darkest area. So I'm going to press just a little bit harder to get that coverage that I want. All right, you can, do as you like, add as much as you want to that area of the star. Okay, so as you can see, I got a nice coating of that rusty hinge. Now, let me get this removed and show you the result. Okay, now as you can see, there's some ink left here on the stencil. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just set my card topper to the side. I'm going to give a little spritz of water onto the stencil, and then using that piece of ATC card, or a scrap piece, I'm just going to try not to waste much ink. I'm going to just pick it up randomly onto this card, just dip and dab right into the ink. And I'm going to start to build another background where my sentiment will sit. All right, let me get my rag in here. Going to try to dot off as much of this ink as I can. For this, I'm not going to be real particular because some of the ink blending will add to the overall appearance of that little ATC that I'm creating for the sentiment. Okay, bringing my card back in. What I want to do, let me get that perfectly dry. What I want to do is just randomly place pieces of the star onto the background, and I am going to overlap colors. So I'm not going to add any ink. What I'm going to do is use my brushes as is. So I can't tell you exactly what colors are on my ink blending tools. They're going to be very random. And it's going to be a combination. And I'm not even going to tape off. I'm just going to use my finger here because I am not putting on a dark coat whatsoever. As you can see, randomly, just going over that card, leaving a very light layer. And I'm even going over top of that rusty hinge. Remove. And there's just a very light color here. You can even see some blending of that orange with whatever blue was on my brush. Coming back in, I'm going to repeat and spritz. Using that ATC card, I'm going to just pick up some additional color to create a fun background for my sentiment. See how that's slowly building? And by the time I get this cleaned up and prepped and ready for the next color, that little ATC card is just about dry. All right, so again, here I am drying everything off. And I'm going to come in with another color. Again, randomly placing. I want to fill up all the white spaces. So this time I'll use whatever ink is left on my pink brush. Again, overlapping colors is fine. Whoops. And randomly placing the points of the star. Now, as you can see, I'm not taping anything off. I'm just trying to be extra careful when I get close to the edges because I don't want to see a straight line mark. I'm going so lightly that it's going to be hard to see anyway. All right, there's a little bit there. And I'm going to repeat the process. A little spritz of water, and then pick up some of that pink to create this fun little sentiment piece. I always have a pile of ATC cards cut on the side of my desk. I don't like to waste the ink. So I have tons of these little backgrounds made by doing what you're seeing right now. And then along the line, I use those for either sentiments or actual ATC cards. Okay, let's come in with another color. This time we'll use a little bit of yellow. Again, just repeating the same process. Just adding a little bit of yellow ink here and there. Not being too careful with my brush. I just want to create random pieces. Okay, let's go one more time with the spritz. I want a little bit more color on that ATC card. I'm going to get some yellow in here. All right, as you can see, the layers are building and building. It almost looks marbled. I think that's a fun look. All right, now, again, you can see I'm not being too careful about getting every bit of that ink off of there. There is going to be a little bit left, and that's okay because of the effect that I'm getting here. All right, let's see, what color have I not used? A green. All right, let me add some green pieces. Again, I have no clue what color greens are on this brush. This is just all leftover ink. Randomly placing it. I just really want to cover up all the remaining white spots. I do not want to see any large areas that are just white. So let me get this area. And let's see how much we have left. Okay, there's a little bit of whiteness here, but I think I'm going to be okay with that, excuse me, because that's where I'm going to place my sentiment. And there's a little white up there, so you know what, very lightly. I'm going to just add a touch of green to break that up. Okay, you can see the process. Remember to make sure you clean these thoroughly when you're done. Being that you're using Distress Oxide on this, as soon as water hits it, it's going to reactivate the ink and it'll be very simple to clean. So you don't have to rush to get that cleaned up. Okay, I'm going to set that to the side. Now what I want to do is take this small piece, this ATC card, and I'm going to stamp my sentiment, which is life is a great big canvas. Throw all the paint you can at it. But being that this is a little damp, I went ahead and I already made one. I have it stamped, and I also have it backed with a scrap piece of black card. So you could actually use any color for a backing. I just happen to have it here. So that's what I'm going to use as my sentiment. And using the Art Glitter Dries Clear Adhesive, I am going to apply that to my card. Make sure I get it somewhat even and straight. And then lastly, the only thing I have to do is create a faux edge around my card. And to do that, I always use these scrap pieces of card that come in our packaging. As you can see, mine are well used. Placing the card on, leaving just about 1/8 of an inch on the left-hand side of the card sticking out. I use a permanent marker, and I'm going to just drag this down the edge, being careful, don't want it to slip, so that I get a nice fine, I hope you can see, a nice fine black line on that edge. I will do that to all 4 edges. Now, I found when I was first learning to do it, the secret was to keep a lot of pressure on my right hand to hold everything in place so that nothing slides. Dragging the pen slowly to the bottom, then you rotate and do the other side. Now, the other trick I found that worked really well for me, not only was holding the weight and pressure onto the card, but when I place the pen, I always look at the tip of the pen and I follow that tip all the way to the edge. And ask me how I know, but the second you get distracted from following that tip is when your pen will slip. So that's why I continue to do it this way for myself, so I don't get those occasional slips. So that being done, I'll take a peek at the finished card. I think maybe you can see it better if I lay it flat on this white surface. But there you have the faux black frame around the card topper. And this will very easily center on a card that is measured 6 inches by 9 inches, so that when you fold it in half, it's 4.5 inches by 6 inches, and it'll fit perfectly in the center of that card. I hope I was able to share with you and show you some fun ways to create backgrounds using a stencil. This one particularly, I really love the Celtic star, but you could see, you could use any of the Sweet Poppy stencils and get the same type of background. So I hope you give this a try. And if you do, would you please post it on the a la carte page? That's where the Sweet Poppy stuff will be. And you can tag me so that I can see your lovely creations. I sure do appreciate you watching everything that I do and commenting. It really means a lot to me. Hey, thanks so much, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.